Hey, everybody, it is May 2025, and it is Saturday. Sit back and chill out. If you're new to my channel, this is dedicated to photography, and as a photo artist, I put a video out every Wednesday, but once a month on a Saturday, we just sit back and chill out, and I try to address some of the issues that you people have had and asked me through my private email address. So we've got 5 different things to talk about. Are we ready for this? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist. Now, let me explain a little bit what I do once a month, because again, every week I put a video out that has to do with photography, softwares, do different demos and stuff as a photo artist and as a photographer. But once a month on a Saturday, I try to put something out called Saturday Sit Back and Chill Out. Grab your favorite beverage. Today, I just got water. But what I try to do is address some of the issues or questions that people email me, or sometimes comments. And my private email address is in the show notes. The reason I have that there is I know a lot of people are afraid to ask questions or maybe make a comment where everybody else can see it and read it. So that's why I make my email address available. I address some issues where I get, say, 2 or 3 or 4 or more of the same, like question or comment. So those get priority and I address those. I can't address everything. I try to take some of the most common ones right there. So anyhow, so let's, by the way, before we get started on the 5 issues, before we get into issue number 1, I want to thank everybody that has been donating to the channel. This is a very small channel, and I really appreciate you going to buymeacoffee.com/Stephen Photo Artist. The information is right here at the bottom of the screen. It's also in the show notes. I'm avoiding doing any kind of subscription type thing. So this is just on a volunteer basis. Whenever you feel like it, you could donate $3 for a cup of coffee. If you go to the extra tab at the website, you'll see some other training materials there that are for like $3, $5, and $7 that you could download and get the training videos along with some assets and stuff to follow along to do the different exercises. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into our May 2025, Saturday Sit Back and Chill. So let's start out with our first issue. Okay, so issue number 1 is Lightroom replacements. Okay, a few weeks ago, we had talked about what are some of the softwares that people are using that they're giving up on Adobe. They don't want to have that subscription anymore. Sometimes there's a bit of an anti-movement against Adobe, but anyhow, a lot of people are moving over to like Affinity Photo 2. We took a look at that, plus some other softwares out there also. But we are also looking for what are some Lightroom replacements that we could do, and we took a look at some, and I got a lot of comments that came back to me of what people are actually going out and using, say, the most of. Now, this is very, say, unscientific survey here, but I got a lot of comments back that said, hey, I'm using this software and this other software that I'll mention here. So I'm going to go to the website right here. Talked about this before, but surprisingly, a lot of people are going to DX Photo Lab. And again, just do a search for DXO. www.dxo.com, and they have different products out there, but DX Photo Lab is something that will replace Lightroom, or what a lot of people are replacing it with. And the features are incredible. A lot of great reviews on this for the ones that haven't looked at it. They do have a trial version that you can experiment with. You don't have to put any money down at all. Just go for it. And if you take a look at, I'm going to go to Buy Now right here on the website. And this is what I like about the software. This is not a subscription based. This is a perpetual license. So it's $229.99. This is US now. So obviously, if you're from a different country, it's going to be a different amount. And if you own the software, say an older version, and you want to upgrade, then it's $109.99. But I like the fact that, again, you can get the trial version. I believe it's for 30 days. Go for it, play with it, and see if you like it. So I was surprised how many people would respond to my email saying that that's what they chose to use rather than using Lightroom anymore. The other one which has been around for quite a while too, is Capture One. And I've known about this software too. And for the people that are new to my channel or fairly new and you haven't been watching me, most people know that I don't use Lightroom anymore for the last few years. And not that it's a bad product. The type of photography I do, I don't need to have Lightroom. So when I used to do weddings and other events, I beat up Lightroom like crazy, but I stopped doing it in 2019. Has nothing to do with what happened in 2020. It was just perfect timing for me. It had to do with my age. I was in my late 60s. I'm now, oh boy, I'm going to be 74 later this year, but I just didn't have the energy and could do what I used to do when I was younger. And that's why I just made 2019 my last year doing that. And so ever since then, I've stopped using Lightroom because everything else I do with the client work that I do, it's in Photoshop. So I'm not dealing with thousands of images to cull through and that kind of stuff. So I just found that I just use the bridge that's built into Photoshop, and I just use Photoshop for my workflow for the client, because I'm only dealing with maybe a half a dozen finalized images or maybe a little bit more, but it's not like it would be for a big event. So what I like about Capture One that I wish maybe DxO Photo Lab would do for the ones that want this is if I go over here, and again, you get the trial download if you'd like. But if I go here to pricing, what I like that Capture One did, again, perpetual license is going to be $317, and again, that's US, and no subscription at all. But if you want a subscription, it's $15.75 that you see right here. And again, if you come from an earlier version of the software, you've got other choices there. So I think it's a great idea giving people the choice to go subscription-based or the one-time purchase, so you get the perpetual license. I wish Adobe would do that, but I don't see them doing it. Maybe they will if they get enough people, dropping out or something. I mean, I don't know, but anyhow, so interesting that you guys responded back. And these are the top two things that seems like most people are jumping into. So that's issue number one. Let's take a look at the next issue. Okay, and issue number two is more non-software topics for this channel, which I really agree. I haven't done much of that at all. And so what does that mean? It's meaning like the philosophy of photographer, maybe techniques in lighting. It might be continuous light versus strobes or natural light or on-camera flash. We might take a look at different type of other photographers, big name photographers, their work and how they do what they do. And so I'm thinking about doing that. And plus, some of the other issues that's going to come up here, I'm going to do a little demo for you on one of the issues here. But I agree that, most of the stuff I've been doing has been software related, techniques in software, which is important. But, how about let's take a look at equipment. Now, for the ones that know me, I'm not going to talk about new camera models and stuff like that, because to me, it's totally irrelevant. There's many other people out there that will, every time Sony comes out with a new camera or Canon or Nikon, everybody's rushing to that. The cameras, they just don't really impress me. It's what you do with the cameras. That's more important than the camera itself. Cameras have been so good for the last few years. And so I agree. So that second issue is, hey, we'd like to see more content that is not software related. I agree. So I'll be working on that as we move into the summer months here in Michigan. Now let's move on to our next issue. Okay, issue number 3 is in-camera effects. And I'd like to thank the person that made a comment regarding this issue, because I forgot to do this, and this was a few weeks ago. I had to write this down so I don't forget. We were talking about things called focal stacking versus focus stacking. And one of the comments that was made was some of these effects we can actually do in our camera. There's other effects like doing a panorama, double exposure, all these different things. So I meet up with some photographers once in a while, and I discuss and I ask certain questions to them. How do they feel about these certain, say, topics or issues? And again, it's a small group of photographers. All of them, they do this as a hobby. This is not what they do for a living. And so I'm just curious as to what their feeling is. So I brought this issue up about effects that you could do in your cameras. And interesting, the comments I got back. Well, some people are using older cameras, so the effects are not even available to them in the camera, and they could care less about doing that. Okay, I get that. Some of my cameras I got, I can do some basic effects. I can do panoramas. I can do double exposure, and every manufacturer of their cameras do it slightly different than others. But the point is, you could do the effect in the camera versus doing it in the software. So the question I threw out was, of the people that do this, do you prefer doing it in camera, or do you prefer doing it in software like Photoshop or maybe some other, editing software that you use? Now, all of these people I was hanging around with, they all use Photoshop. And interesting, the response I got back, and that was, they all do it in Photoshop. They don't like doing it in the camera. Now, is there anything wrong in doing it with the camera? Absolutely not. Because again, I got pounded into my head over years and years of being in photography and stuff. Doing photography and all these different techniques is all about choices. And what choices are right for you doesn't mean it's right for somebody else. Okay, but here's what they said, which I thought was really interesting, and I never thought about it. And again, I had to write this down so I don't forget. So one was, well, hey, my camera can't even do that. So, okay, that is, but newer cameras, we can do that. But second thing was, and I never thought about this, loss of control if you do it in your camera, which I never thought about. And that means they were saying it takes me so long to get a compelling image doing it in the camera. I got better control if I do it in the software, and I don't have to take as many images to get the results that I want, which is interesting, which leads to number 3, and that is, it's very time consuming to get a compelling image if you're trying to do it in camera versus taking the few images that you need to throw it into, say, Photoshop, and it gives you full control to manipulate and get what you want. That makes sense. I get it right there. And then the other issue is, and maybe you can help me out for the ones that do this in the camera. Mine does it this way, and everybody else has been telling me has been the same thing. And that is, if you do these effects, even though you're shooting raw in your camera, if you're shooting raw, when it creates the effect, it's a JPEG image. And if that means it's a JPEG image, for a lot of photographers, they don't like that. They want a 16-bit image, and they can't get that because JPEG is going to be 8-bit. And the reason is, a lot of these photographers do print, and it gives you more information for printing, gives you a lot better results. But if you're not doing printing and you're just showcasing stuff on social media, and that probably doesn't matter, but that does make sense that if you're shooting in RAW but you process like the double exposure and other techniques, these different camera effects, it's saved as a JPEG. Do me a favor. If you do these effects at all in your camera, can it save it? I don't think it's going to save it as a RAW. Maybe it can do Adobe DNG file. I don't know. Mine can't. And I don't know anybody that knows it can do that. But can it save it maybe as a TIFF file, which is a 16-bit? I would just be curious. Or is it always a JPEG? So, make a comment regarding that if you know the answer to it, or email me if you prefer doing it that way. Again, email address is in the show notes. All right, so let's take a look at our next issue. Okay, and issue number 4, and that is a few weeks ago, I did a session on vivid light color grading, and I had some comments that came back to me through my email, and that is, can I do that technique in other softwares like Affinity Photo and others? And my response to that, and by the way, if you didn't see that video, I'll put a link to it in the show notes on the vivid light color. If you missed that, it'll be in the show notes. And then also the one that had to do with focal stacking versus focus stacking, I'll put the link also in the show notes for you if you didn't see that video. So the answer to that is, do I have to use Photoshop? And the answer was no, as long as the software that you use, if it's not Photoshop, it can support layers and blending modes and masking. If it does all of those, then the answer is going to be yes. You typically can do it. So, and you know what? Let me do a quick demo because so many are jumping over to Affinity Photo. So let me open this up. And again, Affinity Photo does support layers, and it does support blending modes and masking. and obviously a bunch of other stuff. But, since a lot of you are now using Affinity Photo, and by the way, heads up, I am no expert at all in Affinity Photo. I bought it because we were offered a huge discount at 50%. So I grabbed it. So it was very inexpensive. I just have not had the chance to really dive in and get serious with it. But I'm just going to double click on my workspace to get the open dialog box. Let me open up this image right here, because I used that in the demo I did a few weeks ago. And let's take a look at, I believe it's under Layer drop-down menu. I'm just going to choose New Fill Layer right here in the drop-down menu. And by default, it's white. I'm going to come down here in our toolbox and just double-click on the white icon there. And the color chooser opens up. I'm just going to go in the green area here, and let's just choose a color like that. And I'm going to close out of that. Now, blending modes. If we come over here to layers, opacity is 100%. We learned that you don't use 100%, but the blending mode in the drop-down menu, there is vivid light at the bottom. So I'm going to choose that. And then I'm just going to pull the opacity down. And then you could add a mask. There's a mask feature right there. I'm not going to do that, but you can watch a video I did a few weeks ago. You could add a mask and maybe take the color off her skin, or areas that you don't want that color, blending mode to be at when you're color grading your image. But we also looked at something called the blend if feature in that video. And there is no blend if category, but over here in layers, there's something very similar. Just the interface is totally different. If you click on this little cogwheel there, and this opens up something called blend options. And again, a different interface. And you could play with this to adjust the way you're doing your color grading. So I'm just going to play with this a little bit, close out, and you can see what it did. So there is my before, after, and after. So the question about, can I do this in Affinity Photo? And the answer is yes, but you could probably do this in a lot of other softwares out there, as long as, again, it supports layers and does the blending modes and masking. Yeah, go for it. You could do that very easy. So that is issue number 4. Now let's take a look at our last issue. Okay, issue number 5, this will be the last one, and that is, I had to write this down again, and that has to do with personal projects. And what I'd like to do is take you out with me. Now, I'm not a video expert, but I'm going to go out in the field. Hopefully, I can do this by the end of May. Here we go. If you've been following me, I said last year I'm making a transitional time where I'm now not going to take on as much client work till a point where no client work at all. And I'll explain why in a minute. But my last client shoot, if everything goes okay with the weather and that, is with a client on May 18th, which means when the shoot gets done, I have to do some processing and editing, get that done for them by the end of May. And what I'd like to do now is spend the time for personal projects. And here's why. Number one, and why I'm not doing paid gigs anymore. One is my age, 74. You start dealing with your how much time do I have left in life type of thing. You start thinking about stuff, and I want to be able to do certain things. And what really hit home with me is I was watching an interview with Albert Watson. Now, if you've never seen Albert Watson before, his work, he's still alive. He's in his 80s. And during the interview, they asked the question, is there any major regrets that you've had about your career? And he said, yeah. And that is, I wish I had more time to do personal projects. And boy, that really hit home with me, because the last personal project I did, and by the way, a personal project to me is you do a body of work with some type of theme to it, and you produce a printed, say, tabletop book, not for sale, just a single book for yourself to have displayed in your house, whatever, to look at on that project. And the last one I did was years ago, and I just haven't had the chance or time to do that. And I have different ideas of doing stuff as personal projects. So what I'd like to do is I will describe to you the project I'm going to do, the framework I'm going to work under, and why I'm doing that framework a certain way. And I'll take you out in the field with me, and I will do some of the images that will be part of a tabletop book. Now, obviously, the finished product will take months and months to do, because if I go out one time, I'm not going to be able to get all the images I need to produce a book. I'm going to have to go to multiple locations, but I'm going to make sure it's something that has to do with outdoors. But I know things like, if you've never seen Albert Watson and his work, let me show you on his website right here. I have to be careful if a picture comes up, because he does do some nude photography, but he's done different celebrities. He's done Steve Jobs' photo portrait for his book, and others, and great photographer. He's also been influenced by Helmut Newton, who passed away, I believe, in the 1970s or so. So there are some nudes in here. So just be aware of that when you go to the website. If something pops up here, I'm going to have to blank it out. But again, great photographer. And again, take a look at his work. Okay, back to me now again. And that is, I would love to try things that I never got serious with. And so things like close-up photography, things like street photography, things like landscape photography, and others, things that I tried in my earlier part of my career just to see if I would like doing any of that stuff. But, I moved toward photographing people all the way from children to high school seniors, family shoots, weddings, that kind of stuff. But now I want to enjoy and try different things. And I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone, I should say. So you guys, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that most of the time when I do end my videos, I always say, hey, get that camera out and make mistakes. Why? Because we learn from making mistakes. You're going to get to watch me get out and do things out of my comfort zone. And trust me, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to learn from those mistakes. And every time I go out to continue doing that category of body of work, I'm sure I will get sharper and better at it, because I do have to make mistakes. So that's the issue number 5 that I always wanted to do, and that is to take you out with me, do some behind-the-scenes video, and then probably I'll take one of the images that I did out in the field and I will edit it for you. But I'm not going to sit there and edit all the different images. I'll just pick one and walk through the process to meet my guidelines on what I want to accomplish with that type of work. All right, so that is the end of this Saturday. Sit back and chill out. It's very loose. Enjoying your drink. I'm just having the water. But let me end this again the way I do most of the time, and that is get that camera out, make mistakes, because we learn from mistakes, and literally think creatively out of the box. Until next time, see ya.